here we are, driving for the first time. Ryan's doing great. How are you doing, guys?
Head on a swivel. Really well.
They are. They're doing super.
Ching chong, ching ching, ching ching.
Come pitching.
Look at Tank. What's
Pirate
the
Town.
Tank?
Oh, and her little perfect spot for her. And I will say I've been doing a good job co-piloting, not micromanaging,
Take a picture of
only
my
supporting.
I'm a witness to that.
Yes. Good job.
All right, what's up everybody? Welcome to my channel and to this video. Thanks for clicking. We're here in Mexico, in the Yucatan actually, and I'm sitting here in my rental car. And a question you might be asking is it worth it to rent a car in the Yucatan, and how does it work? Well, in this video, I'm gonna show you some tips and tricks and get you on the road. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, here we are in Mexico. My family and I had the chance to move down here for a little while, 9 months or so to be exact. And we are living in a pretty urban area, but one major problem that I had or struggled with was, should we rent a car or not? We live in a town that does have, a city that does have Uber and a good public transportation system. However, it's pretty darn hot out. And gosh, it would just be nice to have that control, right? Of getting in the car and, buzzing around town, or of course going to some of these big ruin sites. We're in the Yucatan here, so it'd be really nice to just get out on the road and drive around. And if you're watching this video, you're probably struggling with something similar, right? Like, is it worth that risk and the cost, and how does it work and whatnot? So in this video, I'm basically just going to kind of explain to you what my thoughts were, what I ultimately did, and hopefully give you lots of kind of tips and perspective in between, things to consider when it comes to renting a car here in Mexico. Now, if you're in a different place in Mexico, it's possible that, what I have to say definitely applies to where you're at as well. It doesn't have to be just the Yucatan. And before we get started, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Love to have you join the channel. Like this video if it ends up helping you out, and share this with somebody that you know. You can also leave a comment in the description below. If you're interested also in turning your hobbies and skills into cash, just like I have done with my channel, I'm going to show you how you can do the same thing. Build your own YouTube channel from scratch. Bring your family or you real money. See that link in the description below. You can check that out. The biggest risk that I felt like we were facing if we were going to rent a car would be obviously the financial risk, right? Not only is it expensive per day, but how does that work if you get in an accident? How do you not get hosed, right, by these car companies or whatever? If you look online, go ahead and Google your area that you're going to be in Mexico and rental car, and chances are you're going to get lots of 2 or 3 star companies out there. However, there might be some companies that you've never heard of that are quite good, maybe 4 or 4.5 stars or so. So we'll get to that. Basically, it's the cost risk, right? And also insurance. How does that work? And just being legally vulnerable, right? If you get in an accident and you hurt somebody, how does that work while you're here in Mexico? Now, I don't have all the answers to those things, but that's definitely what was going through my mind. So again, how do we solve this problem? How do we actually rent a car here? And what are some things that you should consider to have that autonomy and that control and that access to go kind of where you want? So the first thing we're going to talk about is insurance and cost. So head on over to Google, like I just mentioned, and just type in some Google searches. Now, your initial inclination might be to go with one that you've heard of. If you're from the US, getting a company like Hertz or whatnot. I can't advise against that necessarily, but I can say that there might be local or better options out there for you. We had some friends that ended up renting a car for a week through Hertz, which was a supposedly reliable company. Their battery ended up dying. They were stuck on the side of the road for 3 hours, had terrible customer service, and it ended up costing them like a ridiculous $1,500 for that week. And it was just like, whoa, so no thank you. That's not something that we're interested in signing up for. So do a little research and just try to write down some of those top companies that come across Google that are maybe something that you've not heard of, right? But that do reflect, I would say, 4 or 4.5 stars, 5 stars, of course, and doesn't have more than just one review, right? Maybe, hopefully you can find something that has like, 120 reviews or higher that has good, even though it might be something that you haven't heard of. So that's what I would do first of all. Secondly, I would erase from your mind that $5 per day is something that you're actually going to get. You've probably done some searches, maybe on Kayak or Expedia or Priceline or whatever, and you're probably pretty excited about this cost that you're seeing. $5 a day. What? That sounds wonderful. Well, the thing is that doesn't necessarily include the liability insurance, and we'll get to that in just a minute. So in other words, you have to really take that out of your mind. You're not going to pay $5 a day. Like nobody, that's just not happening. However, what about $30 a day or $40 a day? That is definitely more realistic, in my opinion and experience, renting a car here in Mexico. So you need to kind of think about that. You're not going to be saving a ton of money. You're going to just be prepared to get out the checkbook. You're going to probably be paying around 30 to 40 bucks US per day. Another thing to consider is insurance. Now, you've got home US-based insurance, I assume, on your car. However, in Mexico, you need to call your insurance company. Ours did not provide coverage in Mexico. In fact, I think Mexican law requires that third-party liability insurance be purchased through a Mexican company, but you'll want to confirm that, of course. I'm no legal expert at all, but that was my experience. So we were in a situation where car insurance company that was US based would not insure us, which led us to the next point. Like, what about credit card? Will that insure us? And you have to read the fine print of your specific insurance that your credit card, if you pay for your rental car with the credit card, you might be covered for like collision, for example. In fact, that's pretty common based on the credit cards that I have. However, not third-party liability, right? So again, you have to be covered legally with third-party liability. Your credit card might cover, the collision on your vehicle, and that could, I think, be a huge headache for you, making sure that you get the police report filed and all this stuff. In other words, long story short, we ended up declining our credit card insurance and just we paid the full insurance that included liability and it included collision with the company that we rented for. And we ended up paying like $40 a day or something, give or take a few bucks because of the conversion rate. In other words, a 3-day car rental, ran us like 120 to 130 bucks or so. And we felt pretty good about that. Now, speaking of price, if you are, looking to rent longer than a few days, ask the company for a monthly rate. You'd be surprised what they say. You might be able to get a $30 or a $43 per day rental down to $31 per day if you have, more of a long-term goal. So definitely ask about that. As far as a deposit, we were charged $500 US for a hold on the credit card in the event that we were at fault for an accident. And this doesn't include like a, little fender bender, ding, or whatever. This is like an accident in which we are at fault. They would take that $500 and that's what they use for, their liability, probably their copay that they have to pay or whatever, however that works. I don't know. But we found like a $500 hold on the credit card was reasonable, if that helps you. And don't forget this exchange rate, because they'll obviously put that in pesos and it ended up being like $583 as a hold instead of $500 because of the peso conversion. So check the conversion rate, of course. When you rent the car from should be a reputable company, right? Definitely take video of the car when you're inspecting it, as they give you the keys and the guy goes around and hey, let's identify any dings. You'll want to check everything from hubcaps to blinkers to chips in the paint. Don't forget the ceiling. Make sure the doors lock. Make sure the air conditioner works. You can Google, like, what should I check for when I rent a car? There's lots of things. I can't possibly go over every possible thing. But you basically want to cover yourself visually with proof so that when you return the car and they say, hey, this is on there, you can say, well, that was already on there, right? Another recommendation, get WhatsApp. Everybody here uses WhatsApp, and it's awesome because you can communicate directly as long as you have a data plan, right, in Mexico with the company. If something goes wrong, if you have a flat tire, you break down, get on WhatsApp, then you don't have to mess around with calling. They're probably going to tell you to get on WhatsApp anyway. based on our experience. So that would be another recommendation. And get familiar with WhatsApp a little bit before you go, so you know how to use it, and have that their number pre-programmed before you venture out, so that you don't have to like figure it out while you're broken down or with the flat tire or something. Right? As soon as it happens, you just pick up the phone, WhatsApp, boom, you're in contact with them. Hey, this is where I'm at. You can share your location exactly with them, provided that there's network data coverage, of course. But that's definitely helpful. As far as what documents you need, a license, U.S. state license, driver's license is what we needed, and we didn't even need our passport with the company that we went with. But be prepared to show your passport. If your driver's license is in a non-Roman alphabet language, you'll need an international driver's license. But in our experience, a U.S.-based driver's license worked just fine. Be careful with topes. They're called topes. Those are the speed bumps, and they're everywhere, and sometimes they're marked and they're not, and they can provide huge damage to your vehicle and make the ride real uncomfortable real fast if you hit one going faster than you should. So be really careful with that. Another risk that you have is just lane culture and passing culture. And I could talk all day about that, but basically following lanes and using blinkers to turn in the US is very rigid, and people follow that to a T, and there's a lot of anger, road rage, and aggression if you break those kind of social norms, right? If you cut somebody off, for example, just think how many times in the news you've seen things like that happen. Here, that road rage doesn't exist. So U.S. drivers, you can leave that shit at the door or at the border. You don't bring that down here. People here are they don't follow the laws or the rules as well as we do in the U.S., but they do not show, or from what I see, even feel any aggression toward other drivers. They're pretty chill, pretty cool. It's just what you do. Someone cuts you off, big deal. You honk the horn and you move on. Like, that's how it is. So you might want to spend some time watching some YouTube videos on lane culture and passing culture as well, because there are some things there that you need to familiarize yourself with before you bring your US-based culture into a foreign country in which you are the guest. Another big risk is dogs, bikes, and people, right? They're just everywhere. Rural areas, big cities, like that's another big threat for a US-based driver renting a car here. Just, you got to have your eyes on a swivel. You have to be like a middle linebacker, head on a swivel. You got to be looking in all directions all the time. And that brings me to my next point. Definitely have a co-pilot. Super helpful if you've got kids like we do. My wife, we put the iPad on, the kids watched a movie the whole time, whatever it takes. And my wife was definitely my second set of eyes in every intersection, because I had never driven in Mexico before. So that is definitely recommended. Download Google Maps to figure out how to do that on your phone before you leave, in case you are in an area where you don't have cell service or there's just no service. That does happen, especially in the Yucatan. Some areas, some roads are pretty remote. So we had downloaded our regional maps to the phone so that we could access those. GPS was unaffected, even though we did not have a connection through the network. So that's another huge tip for you. Use Google Streets to plan your route before you take it. You can actually go into Google Streets mode, right? Go to Google Maps and then find Google Streets, and you can actually get not a bird's eye view, but an actual first person view of the area and the roads, just to get a feel for what kind of road is this? Are there a lot of people on the road? Just what does it look like? We spent some time doing that, and I felt pretty good about our route and where we were planning to go from A to B, right? Another tip for you, have a power cord, a USB power cord, and bring a battery pack with you to power your phone in case the rental car, the USB port does not work, and the chances are, or there's a high probability that it doesn't work. So you need to have a plan B, because GPS sucks the life out of your phone battery, right? So if that doesn't work, then you need to have a power pack to get you through that until you get to your hotel and you can charge up your phone again. Bring a tire gauge from home as well. Rental cars do not have tire gauges. You can roll into a gas station and ask the person to check your tire PSI. That is very easy to do. Make sure you tip the person if you do that. But I found that having a tire gauge is really helpful because you could just do that yourself, and it avoids an unnecessary trip if you know that your tires are inflated properly. How to fill up gas. We used our credit card. You need to ask first before, do you take card or not? And then make sure you tell them full or not, and then octane that you want. Make sure it's not diesel, and you need to ask that from the rental car company, right? Like, what kind of gas does this car require? Because it might be assumed that you know and you don't. So do that. You swipe your card, make sure it's at the pumps at 0, so it's not charging you for more. And that, I think, will be helpful. And again, bring coins for tipping. Federal highways are great, and make sure you look up tollways beforehand. Overall, don't overthink things. Trust yourself and have the confidence, and your rental car will go great. We don't regret it, and hopefully this helps you out. Thanks.